Thank you, Pastor. Call to order the meeting of Tuesday, May 28th. That's a little hard to get used to, being Tuesday. Would you please take the roll?
Councilmember Archibald.
Here.
Councilmember Ashford.
Present.
Councilmember Beaton.
Here.
Councilmember Harris.
Here.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Here.
Councilmember Warden.
Here.
Mayor Rapp.
Here. You have the minutes from the special meeting of May 13th, the regular meeting of May 13th, and the special meeting of May 16th. Is there a motion to receive and file?
So move, Madam Mayor.
Support.
Councilmember Ashford and supported by Councilmember Pemberton. Is there any additions, deletions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes stand as submitted. We do have one presentation tonight. If the clerk would please read it.
Police Chief Platzer will introduce the city's 3 new police officers, Agnieszka Gora, Harrison Sweihofer, and Zachary Washkevich.
Mayor Rupp, City Council, City Manager Freed. I'd like to introduce you to our 3 new police officers that just started within the last week. So first of all, Zachary Washkevich. He's from Sanilac County, and he recently graduated from the Ferris State University program, where he came out as a certified police officer and also with his bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Harrison Sweihofer also just graduated from Ferris State University at the same time. With a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, certified police officer, and he currently lives in the city of St. Clair. And Agnieszka Gora, she's from Hamtramck. She recently graduated from the Macomb Police Academy and has a bachelor's degree from Madonna University. So Zachary started 3 days ago. He's been on with a field training officer. Harrison and Agnieszka just started today with their admin week. They'll start their admin week for the rest of this week, and then they'll start their field training program. So if everything goes well with their field training program, they'll be certified for solo patrol by September. And then currently we're just 1 officer down right now, so we're planning on hiring 1 more in July, and we'll be at our numbers. So.
Very good. Welcome to the city of Port Huron and our police department. We'll all, yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Welcome. Thank you. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Yep. Welcome.
Any strong offers down there related to you? Oh, good Lord, the whole Agnieszka, welcome aboard. All right, like it.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
Single Bulldogs, right?
Congratulations. Thank you.
I'll be looking forward to taking a road trip with you guys.
Congratulations. Yep.
Very nice. Yes.
All right. Thank
And
you.
ladies.
Thank you. Now is the time for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience who wishes to address the City Council this evening on any item on the agenda or that we have jurisdiction over, please come to the podium, give us your name and address, and you have 4 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Lori Olford. I live at 411 Edison Boulevard in Port Huron. And the reason I'm here tonight, I think I submitted a packet earlier. If you want to take a look at that, I'm just going to really speak to a few things. In the summer of 2017, my neighbor to the west of my house, Tom Beadle, who lives in Rochester Hills, Michigan, is an attorney there and resides in the summer occasionally at this residence, asked to get a variance for the addition, to put an addition on his home. There was a garage, and he wanted to tear that down and put on a new garage. We had good conversation about it. He knew that it was going to block my backyard. It would be maybe not appealing to me. So we had some good conversations. He worked with Bill Vogan, the architect, who actually lives in our neighborhood as well, and they came up with an agreeable plan to me, and to them it was a 1.5 stories, and it allowed for some sunlight, and it was appealing to the neighborhood. And by the way, I just wanted to mention that I'm here on my behalf, Bill Vogan's, and many of my neighbors who live in the Sherman Woods Association. So he was granted the variance, even though I came to the Board of Appeals and asked that he wouldn't be, just because of the size of the structure that he was, that he asked for. So the basement was dug out. That basement was not in the original plan that was approved by the zoning board. The foundation was poured, and nothing was done for a year. Construction began in 2018, of October of 2018, and the entire frame and the walls went up in 2 days. So the builder came, put everything up in 2 days, and that was it. It was roughed in. So the roof, and there's a picture of that as well on page 3 of your handouts. So I met with Marvin Shagney, the building inspector, and asked that the homeowner, or that he inspect the design, the building, because it was not what the homeowner had submitted in the original plan to the Board of Appeals, zoning board, and to him. And he came and concurred, and he put a work stop order in, so there was no more work that would be done on it until the owner came up with a new plan to correct that building. So this was, done. Okay, so anyway, so that fast forward to April of 2019, and I see some construction going on, so I call the building inspector, and he said that he was submitted, he was given a new plan, and that this plan was, approved by him, and that they were going to continue the construction. The plan that was given to him is on page 7, and basically it's the exact same plan that was given by architect Bill Vogan, with a few minor changes to windows and adding this gable roof line, which isn't where it says it's going to be on this drawing. So we again went to Marvin and asked, with no answer, and then I made a phone call to David Haynes, planning director, and he deferred to Marvin Shagney, and Marvin sent me an email. And the email indicated that he has the authority to make the decision on his own, and that he was giving him the authority to continue. Is my time up? Okay. Okay. Well, I know that Bill is here, and he's going to continue with the issue here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Bill Vogan, and my wife Esther and I, we live at 418 LaSalle, which is just about 3 houses down from the house we're talking about tonight. And when I got involved with this, the owner approached me and said, I want to build a house, I want to build an addition on my house. I can't do it because it doesn't meet the zoning ordinance, the setback requirements. If you have an attached garage, it's got to meet the setback requirements of the original house. So I prepared a drawing for him, and a floor plan, an elevation, and a site plan showing his requested variance. In that process, Lori came to us, and here I was on the other side of the table then. I was with the owner, and she said, I have some real concerns about the character and the quality of this house. It's going to be, if you build a 2-story structure, it's going to be very imposing from one standpoint. It's going to be a sheer wall facing her house. It's going to obstruct natural daylight and sunlight. And so with that in mind, and also your zoning ordinance, which prescribes the size, scape, and character of the houses and additions, how they should contextually blend into the neighborhood, we proceeded to design the house for Tom. And I think you probably all have that in your packet. So we went to the Zoning Board of Appeals. He said, I live in Rochester. I plan on living here someday. I want to build this addition. I understand Lori's concerns. Here's our design. And even though it was the ZBA, they just approved the variance for the setback. It was with the understanding he was going to be a good neighbor. He was going to take into consideration not only Lori, but Richard Kenny, who lives just adjacent to him. You know, he's got a 2-story cave that he drives through now. And also the understanding that there's an electrical transformer right there that doesn't meet DTE requirements for clearances. So he had the safety issue, he had the design issue. So when we prepared the preliminary drawings, they got approved. He asked me then to prepare a foundation plan. I did that. He got his building permit based on a design foundation plan and a conceptual building elevation. He proceeded to build the addition. Didn't look anything like what we had proposed. And Marvin stopped work. It doesn't meet the zoning ordinance. They went back a year later and came back with this other drawing that, if you have it in the pack, it shows a lowered ridge, it shows a lowered eave. Not exactly like the original, but it was at least an attempt to reduce the mass of the building so that the garage wasn't bigger than the original house. Well, they proceed to, what we say, put a little lipstick on the pig, and they put a couple of oval windows in. They didn't change any of the ridge lines, any of the eave lines. It's still the massing of the building remained the same. So that's why we're here tonight, because 2 times he didn't do what he said he would do. And more importantly, you know, this is probably something that is, the fellows from Rochester, and Rochester, Birmingham, has had this problem with Bigfoot buildings. They just don't blend with the neighborhoods. They're massive. And they've had ordinances, they've enacted them to prevent this from happening. So here it's coming here for us now. And the builders in the community, and I've seen it, I'm almost, one more thing. I've seen it, and it's sort of like, I don't want to ask for permission, just forgiveness. And we forgave him, and we don't like it, and we don't want to stand for that. So I didn't realize 4 minutes went by so quickly.
My name's Jill Parrott. I'm an employee in the city of Port Huron, and I'm a friend of Lori's. I'm going to sum up the issue for you. If you look at page 8 of the
What's your
packet,
first name?
you'll be able to see. Jill?
Jill.
Yes. The homeowner submitted one plan that was approved by the zoning board and the building department and built something completely different. 2, the addition is very close to the DTE transformer and creates a risk of fire for the addition as well as houses on either side of it. 3, the addition to the house is not compatible with the scale, height, period, style, and architectural design of the existing homes within the block surrounding the lot, which is in ordinance number 52 through 699. 4, the addition will decrease the value of Lori's house as it dwarfs it and blocks all afternoon sun from the backyard, which has a very lovely pool. Used to be a lovely pool. The revised plan submitted to the building inspector is the same dimensions and design as the first one. The homeowner has made no changes to the overall structure of the addition and is still not building what the plan indicates. Why would he be given permission to continue construction? And as a person who has looked to buy in that neighborhood, when we first started looking for houses, there was a really lovely house there. And we had just started looking at houses, and I didn't understand, we were young, I didn't understand the difference in prices and neighborhoods, and there was a tiny little house that seemed a little too expensive for us, and we looked in a different area and bought somewhere else. And now I know, because of that neighborhood and its character, that I would still be living in the city of Port Huron in that neighborhood on that lot, probably because it's a very unique neighborhood with a unique character to Port Huron. And you could take any house in that neighborhood and move it 2 blocks over, and it would be worth less than in that neighborhood. I just think it's a jewel of a neighborhood that attracts people to Port Huron and keeps people in Port Huron, and I really think that the council should consider sticking with its zoning ordinances and not giving variances that harm neighbors and an entire community in that area.
Could I have your address before you walk away? I'm sorry.
Yes, I live in the township, but I work with the Port Huron schools. And I used to live on Sanborn, which is where we chose to live instead of Armour Street
Okay,
at that time.
thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening?
Hi, my name's Sue Zappa, Z-A-P-P-A. I live in Clyde Township. I have 22 rentals, of which 11 are in Port Huron. And my concern on this situation is that if you allow this, it just gives me permission to build and do what I want, and then hopefully you'll just say, oh, that's okay. You know, we forgive you. So you're setting a precedent if you allow this, and I'm very concerned that you will lose total control of your building process if you don't address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening?
My name's Mary Ann Herman. It's Herrmann, and I live at 3027 Armour. As a resident of the city, I ask that you follow the ordinances. I, too, could be a victim of someone doing addition or based on what they would like to do, and it could increase value of my house, probably decrease value of house. I live in a small house. All of us as residents have that possibility. I encourage that people have opportunity to do work and renovations for their places of living, but we have ordinances to protect everyone. So I encourage you to continue to follow the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience who wishes to address the council this evening? Seeing none, I'll declare the public comment closed, but I will state on there that you've certainly brought a lot of things up. We've listened to you, and we will ask the administration for a report back to us on the several points that you have mentioned. At this point, that's all we can do is ask them to please report back to us as a whole and address the different issues, the DTE transformer, the whether or not they comply with the rules that they should have. So, unless you're ready to address it right now.
Give a quick overview.
Well, I think they're all
Okay,
here.
go
You
ahead.
should.
So I'll get started on this. So I live in the neighborhood as well, just down the block from this facility as well. The Zoning Board of Appeals, per the Michigan Planning and Enabling Act, they allow variances for setbacks. They don't deal with the designs. They don't deal with the structure itself. So from a process standpoint, the gentleman who owns this home has complied with all of the laws. He went through the zoning, the appeals process, received a proper variance. The stop order, there was some deviation in the blueprints, but there was not deviation in the footprint. And so it didn't violate our zoning based on square footages or the setbacks or deviate from the appeal in any way. The issue is the roof line matches the existing ridge line. And based on the case studies we have of numerous homes throughout the neighborhood, there are similar structures and similar additions within a four block area in Shermanwood specifically for height and for ridge line. And we have some comparables that we pulled, and David Haynes will be glad to share that. We put together an information packet. The issue is he has complied with the law. Under the Michigan Planning and Enabling Act, he has legal rights as well. When you start a building project, if you want to change the exterior, the doors or the windows and whatnot, as long as you don't deviate, the footprint, you don't have to go back through another ZBA process. So from a process standpoint, he has complied with all the processes. The design, the character, that's left up to the interpretation of our building inspector. Based on the case review, he did issue the permit. He has that legal ability to do it. And so we'll do a review. I've asked David to conduct a review to develop case models. We've assembled properties from all over the neighborhood. We've looked at their ridge lines. We've looked at recent additions in the neighborhood. And on first glance, although we may not like it, he has a legal right to do it. And so we'll put together a report, and we will make that available within 7 days. On next Monday, we'll have that available from the planning department for you to pick up.
And the council
What about
will have
the-
this?
Yes, the council has a rough draft already.
What about the DTE
So
transformer?
we don't take care of the safety distance between DTE's poles and their easements. That's something that you need to take up with DTE themselves. So we don't regulate DTEs. If they have an easement, they have a pole, everything they do with their poles and their distance of where there is with structures, that's something DTE takes up with the property owners. We have no jurisdiction over that.
Madam Mayor, I know
Yes,
this is out of
Councilmember
order,
Ashford.
but this is important. And what about the ordinance that's mentioned in here? Are we in violation of the ordinance?
No, they went through the appeals process and received the proper footprint setback. He has not deviated from the footprint. Adding a basement, changing some windows, the ridge line is not that much different. So from a legal standpoint, we're using precedent that the courts have upheld. And so although it's different, the courts have upheld what is a reasonable difference. And so we believe that the man has complied with all the laws.
And so lastly, you have original versus
Yep.
what he has current. So when he did change over to that, was there any notification that had to be made?
No, because there was no changing in the footprint, and this happens all over the city. People start a construction project, they get halfway through, and they decide to make some changes to the design. As long as it doesn't change the zoning setbacks or a variance that was already granted, it's just changes in the footprint, changes in the exterior, that can be done through the building department, and that's regulated through state statute.
So like our change orders. I think that's it for me.
So we will do a deep dive, because we want to make sure this is done right, and if it's, and so David has been reviewing it for he spent a good chunk of his last couple of days going around the neighborhood, taking photos, measuring other homes, and putting a nice case file on it together. So we take this issue serious. I live there, I walk by it every night, and so I've also noted that it's pretty, decent girth from the road. I've noted that as well. I was out there this morning as well, conducting a site visit and photographing it, so I would have documents, and so the council did receive a informational packet before the meeting as well on it.
Okay, and one more important thing is that if we did stumble on something that wasn't right or whatever, it's not the council that we have to go. We do have the directive policy. It goes back to the planning commission. Most time people think it's the council that can make all these changes, but you can direct the planning commission to do their job.
One of the major things is there's the neighbors who may not like it, and it may not be the design of their taste. Then there's the legal thresholds for what is deemed similar, what is like the neighborhood in architecture and design, what's already been done in the neighborhood. There's a home just up on the corner. There's about 4 homes we documented today that have similar additions made on, similar heights. And so the homeowner, we also have to look out for their legal rights as well if they're complying with the law. And so far, it appears they're complying with the law. So we'll review it to make sure of that, but we just want to make sure that we have both sides looked at.
Be available in about a week, right?
Yeah, we'll have a bill on Monday.
David?
Okay.
Yeah, David's in the phone.
I just want to make one comment, Mayor and Council. We have been in contact with DTE, and the building official plans on meeting with the DTE representative and reviewing the location of the pole and its transformer in relation to the roof line. Mr. Shagney is out this week on vacation, visiting with family out of state, but I believe it's going to be the first of next week. He plans to meet with DTE to basically assess that situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, before David goes, it's the credibility that's on the line where it mentioned that Mr. Shagney said he makes decisions on his own. I would like to think that he makes a decision based on facts and in support of our ordinance. So how do you see that?
David, I'll take that.
Okay.
Every decision that our building inspector makes, we always have to make sure we'll withstand essentially a judicial review. We anticipate every decision the building inspector is going to be made is going to be challenged in court. And so all the decisions he makes are based on state statute, international building codes, and our ordinances. And so the decision is not just what Marv likes or what he doesn't like. The decision is based on case studies, current law, and will this withstand judicial review? And that's how he makes his decisions.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that because I don't want to think we have employees out there thinking that they can say what they want to say. So
We review the character of the neighborhood.
Okay.
Whether or not the property, new construction, is out of character. That's why it's important that we drive the neighborhood, understand what is currently within the neighborhood as far as structure, size, design. obviously, Sherman Woods was built in the 1940s. The lots and their setbacks are very narrow. They tend to be very close to one another by nature. So as time has gone on and there have been many additions and two-story constructions, they tend to be very close to one another. You will see houses almost right up abutting the adjacent property owner's driveway with a two-story structure on the driveway line. And that's just the nature of the neighborhood based on the original design from 1940. But people today like to have a little bit more room, so you see some of the larger two stories in the neighborhood. And that's what we look for. Is what is the character? Is the proposed addition or new construction in character with the neighborhood?
In addition to David's comment as well, the building inspector, when I saw the communication, reviewed the emails this morning, when he said that he's the one that makes the decision and signs, that's per statute. David and I can't go direct him to sign a building permit. I can't direct him in any way. State statute designate him as the building official, and the reason for that is that helps get the politics out of it. And so that's what he meant by he's what makes the decision. He's the legally appointed person. David and I couldn't even sway that decision.
Well, I just wanted to make that clear, but I appreciate your feedback, and I appreciate the neighborhood here, this evening, and the best thing in the world is to get an understanding, and we are going to continue to work on that, right? So,
we'll prepare a report for you.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rupp.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have one question. Is just the original process of somebody coming, purchasing a home, and I think it was mentioned that he went to the zoning board of appeals to get an exception for what the size of the lot or setbacks on the lot? Is that the first one he went to?
Because he demolished the garage, it then had to conform to the setback requirements, and also that it was going to become an attached garage. So that meant that its 25-foot rear setback had to comply, or he had to request a variance. Actually, there's very few properties probably that would be constructed in Sherman Woods now that would meet that 25-foot rear yard setback. So he had to request that variance in order to move forward with the reconstruction of that existing garage.
Let me ask, just because somebody else mentioned on the dice here, I can't remember who, about having to go to the planning commission. Was the planning commission involved in this at all?
No.
Yeah, I didn't. So that's where I was. So when you go to the zoning board for the initial thing for the exception, are you also saying, stating that it's going to be a one-story or two-story, or the design specs as well?
The ZBA is an appeals process for dimensional variances, not the design and aesthetics and height. It can be a height variance if, like for that residential zone, it's a 35-foot height restriction. If he goes beyond that 35 feet, he could request a variance for a height there. But that is typically a dimensional request going to the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. I'd be interested to hear, again, a little more information, follow-up on this.
Yep.
So you can grasp it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. We will move on with the agenda to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Ashford will take the vote.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden? Yes. Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Mayor Rupp?
Yes, there were 3 items on the consent agenda, authorizing and supporting the submission of a matching grant application to the Michigan Council for Arts and Cultural Affairs Capital Improvement Program for the purchase and year-round use of an outdoor portable stage, sound system, and movable bistro tables and chairs to accommodate and enhance arts and cultural performances at the McMorran Place Plaza. Authorizing the submission of a special liquor license application to the Michigan Department of Licensing and Regulatory Affairs Liquor Control Commission for the City of Port Huron's Rocking the Rivers event on Thursday evenings during the month of August at Kiefer Park, and recommending the license be issued. Confirming and approving single-lot special assessment for fines, assessments, and/or cost of removing blight, blighting factors, and/or causes of blight, as well as the abatement of nuisances. So we will then go to, from the city manager, number 1.
Accepting the quote from Synergy Products in the amount of $16,540.05 for the installation of in-car camera systems, modems, and universal gun locks to 15 current patrol cars.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, supported by Councilmember.
It was me.
Oh, wow. Boy, you two. Beeden, Councilmember Beeden, supported by
Jeff,
Pemberton, yes. We have got it down.
just keep the meeting moving.
I'm going to have to look up more. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, yeah, this is just to replace the in and out, change of vendors.
Yep.
That's it? Oh, okay. Is there anything significant other than what you mentioned?
No, it's a pretty good deal given the amount of manpower and effort it takes. I mean, this is wiring, this is bolting, and it's a pretty intensive thing.
Okay.
Any other discussion, questions? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes?
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Resolutions, number 1.
Adopting the capital improvement program for the 2019-2020 through 2024-2025 fiscal years.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Second.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald. Is there any discussion?
Mayor Rep?
Councilmember Warden.
Well, in the past, again, this moving document, I think it gets originated and done at the Planning Commission with the different inputs as well, is that right? For this capital improvement program?
Quite under state statute. that
Yep,
is
so as it comes here, what I noticed this year, and let me just put it into this perspective. My backdrop on this whole thing is really the overall financial situation that the city's in. We all know how much debt we have. We know how big the unfunded liabilities are, and of course, the maximum strain that we have with the rising ARC payments that are being required. We know it's a very tight road with one little thing could throw us off. And when I see I noticed that the previous capital improvement plans the last 2 years had an outlier, 6 years plus and beyond, at an $18 million plus fire department and police department replacement headquarters. And of course, that's just our financial situation. I don't think that would come to light even at over 6 years. This year's budget, it did still have it has in there just the fire department. It has a replacement. It has the noted of potentially closing 2 of the fire stations, and it does note, of course, the central fire station, that a potential an expenditure about 5 years out of close to $4 million for a replacement of a new fire station to replace potentially 2 that are closed. And I still think with our financial situation, I think that's too early for us to potentially use taxpayer dollars to, whether it comes to light or not, but $4 million and then to close the 2 fire stations, I think we might be better off maintaining all 3 locations and trying to inch along with just some renovations and updates till we get, probably 6 to 10 years out to see where this financial picture ends up. So I did have that concern that I wanted to bring up regarding the capital improvement program. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I
Yes.
could just note, the reason why we have the scheduled replacement is not because we want a new fire station. It's because we believe that after needs assessment, which I'll be bringing you this year, Central Fire Station is literally falling into the Black River. We have major structural and foundation issues. We have cracking that's transitional in both directions, meaning it's cracking one way and cracking back ways along the foundation wall. So a decision is going to have to be made sooner than later. Do we invest in Central Fire Station and bring up to current standards? But the issue becomes, is Central Fire Station was a great location many years ago, but since that time, roads have closed, access has been blocked off. It's now not a very good location to dispatch from. Preliminary reviews show that building a newer station south of the Black River and combining Station 4 and Central to create better manpower, better response times. We try to aim for a 4-minute response times. It's very doable. So what we want to make sure is whenever we spend taxpayer dollars, we want to make sure we spend taxpayer dollars in a manner that's not good, good money after bad money. And so we would not want to invest in a station that's needs major structural repairs, that's outdated, and doesn't meet the standards of the 21st century. Back in the day, we didn't have hazmat. We didn't have a lot of these teams that we do currently. And so what we'll review, and we'll bring in professional experts to review what is the proper locations. Can Central Station be rehabbed? Does it make sense? If not, what's an alternative? We put that placeholder in there because we want the citizens of Port Huron to know that these are on our radar. That, we may not fund this fire station. It's been on there for like 10 years. We keep pushing it out. But we want the citizens to know, and the possible federal agencies and grant partners, that we recognize that this is a need that is emerging. We're going to assess it, develop a plan of action, and it could lead to a new station. We are one of the few communities that have stations from the 60s without being rebuilt or rehabbed or found a better location. Times have changed since the 60s, and so if you take an aerial map of 1960 of Central Station, look at it today, it's very different. In addition to that, I don't want to spend millions of dollars rehabbing a station that's in a terrible location. So I think we all owe the taxpayers to do a very broad review of what's in the best interest of the fire safety and what's in the best interest of the financial picture of the city. That's why it is on there. We are not going to go pull the trigger on it if we don't need to, but Chief Corey Nicholson has made it a priority to review our fire safety readiness at each department and to come back with probably a study within the next 6 months to begin looking at this and bringing some outside experts.
Thank you.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes.
On that note, when you're putting together that packet, I assume along with that will be the value of that property and what we could do with the property, and as well as how long it would take us to recoup
Correct.
based on what we can earn from that property. I got to believe that property is much more valuable to being put on the tax roll than it is being a rundown fire station.
Correct. The other issue we have is, can we increase fire response times by locating the station south of the Black River in a more centralized part of the south side? Fourth station at the very, very end of the city, almost to Marysville. Mm-hmm. Central Station's relatively close to where the third station is, Station 3 is. So really, can we think about this in a long-term strategy that's better fire safety for the south side? Because really, what Chief Nicholson has brought to attention is our stations are crumbling, and can we provide better fire safety to the south side? And so that's what we're looking at. But there's, you can always make a motion to strike it off if you'd like.
No,
It's still just a plan.
It is.
Yep.
Yes, it's not, there's no funding going to it at this particular point, just a plan.
Mayor Rupp?
Yes.
Yeah,
Councilmember
I
Ashford.
just want to echo my support for the resolution. In terms, sometimes we used to look at it as if it was a wish list, and it is required by law that we have a plan, we have something that municipalities work towards. Just like you said, it's not that we just have to do it within that 6-year period. Something may happen that turn the curve, but you have to demonstrate beyond any reasonable doubt that you have something in place that we're working towards as a city. And actually, what is it, 132 million, it is in alignment with our budget.
Correct.
So I want you to know that too. We didn't actually go outside and try to say that we're going to put this to and this to that, but not just the fire department, everything under that plan is within that budget that we have. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you. Any other comments, discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes?
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Councilmember Warden?
No.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes. Item 2, please.
Adopting the annual city budget, including the Downtown Development Authority budget, for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2019, and authorizing the levy of the tax millage rates.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald and Councilmember Ashford. Is there discussion? We did have the opportunity to meet on this on the 16th. Is there any other further discussion?
Mayor Rupp, I'm
Councilmember
talking so
Ashford.
much, I studied this thing to death, but I think this vote tonight, I would like to see this unanimous, only because the people believed in us enough to pass a millage. And this is us speaking back to them. We went over that budget, and we saw what was before us, and we know that there is still some ways to go in terms of transitioning to where we need to be in regards to our unfunded liability strategies. But I think that we need to show them that we're with them by passing this budget. And, I mean, the holdout isn't a holdout for anything. There was no smoking guns or anything. I think that the city administration, they really dug deep to come up with the budget that we have before us. And certainly, the least we could do is be leaders tonight and pass a unanimous yes on behalf of our budget for our citizenry.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilmember Harris.
yeah, if I could, I've been thinking about this all day or in the last couple of weeks, and it's kind of been an emotional day, and this probably even makes it a little bit more emotional. But when you look at this, and then you read the Times Herald this morning, and we're looking at with a combination of this of still expending a huge amount of money with a possibility of art van construction, and we don't even own the property. But just throwing that aside, I mean, that's something we're going to bat down the road probably for some time. But I guess the outstanding thing that gets me as far as this budget goes is I'll go back to the April 23rd meeting of last year, and it was Resolution 18055. And I just think this budget just sends the message to the bargaining unit employees. When you looked at the budget, and I know another Councilmember Warden brought up the fact that we have people here that are getting 5% increases or 7 or 8% increases. And I look at that, and I also looked at the value, and I don't think you can put a value on anybody on a percentage name basis and stuff. I think you have to get people by what they do and how they do it. And like I say, we're in an issue where we're negotiating with probably the majority of our employees, our bargaining unit employees, and we're telling them that this is all we can give them, yet we have a different formula for our at-will employees. And that's really my concern. I could probably ramble on all evening, and I don't want to do that, but it's an issue that touches my heart. So, thank you.
Thank you. I think that issue, there's a different formula used for.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, if I could, that information is, with all due respect, Councilman Harris, is categorically false. The information that was brought up at the budget workshop was used on budget work documents from the previous year, not the adopted budget. The non-union employees received the exact same contract as the union employees did. If you factor in the step increases plus the 2.5% wages, our collective bargaining employees received larger increases year over year than our non-union employees did, and we can break that information down. But the notion that non-union employees get paid more and faster raises than union employees is categorically false, and the data doesn't support that. I can provide you with the accurate budget documents to do comparables. I know that one comparable is done with inaccurate information, but to make that statement is very damaging to the morale of employees, both collective bargaining employees and the non-union employees who received the same agreement. We passed a resolution, the council did one, approving the 5 collective bargaining agreements that also issued the same agreements for non-union employees. My pension was cut, my health care was cut, and I also received the same raise that non-union employees did of 2.5%. We all took those exact same cuts. So I'm paying more for my health care when my daughter was born. My pension's been cut. And so I didn't receive anything more than our bargaining employees did. And same with all of our department heads. So it's categorically false. It's insulting to me, to the leadership here, and to the non-union employees who had to sacrifice. They got all their benefits cut too. So we all got the same deal. I would never take a deal or offer a deal to our collective bargaining agreements that I wasn't willing to subject myself to.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Councilmember Pemberton.
I want to echo what Councilwoman Ashford said. This is actually my first budget as a councilman, my second budget that session I attended in the last year or so. And there's a couple things I find interesting about this process being on the other side of the table. When I was running, when I was running for city council, one of the most common things people said to me is, don't be a yes person. Don't just get up there and always say yes to everything. And I think there's sometimes that that perception that's just not accurate, because not everyone, last year I was the only public attendee of the budget workshop session. And so I don't think it's at all a hard thing to ask for, to say we should have a unanimous vote on this budget, because we all sat and fleshed it out together. We all talked about the issues. The questions that were, the questions that were asked were addressed very directly. I think I want to thank all the department heads and all the city workers and the city administration for putting together all of the work that went into the budget. And even looking at the capital improvement plan, it's easy for me to say yes to that because I've walked in that fire station. And I think it would, Councilman Warden, it would really do you well to do that same thing. It's much easier to look at some of these decisions when you've walked through, and it'd be easy to say, I can vote no on this capital improvement plan because it sounds good. And it sounds nice to say, hey, we shouldn't spend taxpayers' money, but if it's an ill-informed decision, it's not good. And I think it's easy to get up here and say, you know what, I'm going to vote no on this budget so I can say later, hey, I didn't vote for that budget. But we all discussed this budget. We all worked out every issue. We got every question answered, and there was not one question from that meeting that either before the meeting or after that I haven't had answered it or haven't had other questions answered from other council members. So I think a unanimous yes vote would make a lot of sense given what the budget's been through and the budget that has been proposed.
Thank you, Councilmember Pemberton. Councilmember Ward.
Mayor Epp, just real quick, Councilmember Pemberton, I appreciate that, but I do want you to know I have been in that fire station and I have been in the other fire stations, just so you know. What I have here is I just want to pass these down for everybody. And what I did, if you want to pass these down, it looks thick. It's not picking apart everything. And I actually just, the main thing, once you get it, just turn to page 2. Because really, I think, do I have enough to get down there? Does everybody have one? Sorry.
Oh, there should be 5.
I have another one here.
We need 5. There. Score there. What page did you say?
Well, I just start on page 2, and then the rest of the stuff I just included in there are just some articles and stuff that I did for research that I printed off for all of us that you can kind of go through. My main thing this year, again, I appreciate the department heads, the city manager for over the years here. Really, we're walking this tight rope, getting things done with looming, major crisis and rising ARC payments and all the work that he did the last couple of years over lobbying and working so hard for input, as well as the other people around the state to try to get. Always thing that stuck in my mind is that a city that you mentioned, like our city of Port Huron, we just didn't have the tools in the toolbox because they had a restriction on the credit rating with our ability to borrow, I think was the main thing. So I do appreciate all the effort that he put in, and to go over and get that tool now was a success to have it available to us. But what I started thinking about is I started doing as much research as I could and trying to find out, what I found was there was an awful lot of cities out there that, in the last 10, 15, 20 years, there's a lot of examples, 1997, 80s, big cities that took on, utilized borrowing money to, with issuing pension obligation bonds that are, at a fixed rate, that are at a specific period of time, and that money all gets put into right into the pension fund and into investments. And there was quite a few examples that kind of popped up with some concerns about some of the other cities that had negative impacts or negative experiences that happened, whether it was a stock market or an investment went down, or depending on the timing. And I thought, if anything, I wanted to give you a copy of all this stuff to you guys so you can take it home and read. And I really think if we can learn anything from somebody else's, their unfortunate experience, but it does there's some studies in there as well that they kind of highlight some concerns and some things that happen. We may be able to, know as much as possible going into this, other than just, we know the balance sheet's going to initially look good if we do the $55 million, put it into the MERS fund. We are subject to, the risk is they're going to invest it, they're going to invest stock and bonds and be subject to the market. They aren't going to hold back on it, so we're going to have this whole lump sum that gets put in there. And, if we look ahead and there is some downtimes where that market return is negative or has a shock or has a potential duration of time there, where we actually are still going to be paying on that, but we may actually have our annual required contribution might be forced on us to go up because of that lowered level of the MERS fund. There also are some points in there too that these valuations, 7.5% return or 7.75. Some of these other these articles kind of state and show that, hey, once you issue the bonds and do it, we're stuck. We're paying it. That money's in there, but we still, as a city, could be subject to if that actuary actually changed the rate of return or changes some other assumptions that might actually increase our potential additional our ARC payments on top of whatever our bonds are. So it's really just kind of to make sure we look at this as a whole. And my concern, when I thought about it, I'm thinking we're going to be close to maxing, and when I say max, with this excitement of $55 million, borrowing money on behalf of the city of Port Huron taxpayers, whether it's 20 years or 30 years. I just did a couple examples. Again, I don't have an exact amortization or bond calculator. I just did it. And just the gist of it, that if we borrow money for $55 million, it gets invested in the stock and bond market through MERS, which they're going to keep it invested whether it goes up or down. That $55 million borrowed at 4.75%. The payments might be $4.3 million for principal and interest that we pay over once 20 years, but the total payments on the taxpayers are going to be $87 million. So our taxpayers, we're basically going to be making a decision that the taxpayers are going to be paying $31 million roughly in interest for borrowing $55 million. And I just want to make sure that we really understand that that's a key component as well. And again, the farther out I did an example of 30 years, that it would even be higher. It would be $105 million total that we would be paying or making our city taxpayers pay for 30 years on just to borrow money to get the pension fund assets up that are still subject to some risk. So for what I want to say is that hopefully this cannot be political when we're talking about the pension bonding and the pension issues, and there's plenty of examples or at least comments in there that it's not like just refinancing a home or a mortgage. You'll see it in some of the articles that we really have these other risks, and if something happens to the negative where the downturn or potential spike to our demand on over and above that payment, we might be forced to cut services and cut some people, and that's my concern. So I think there might be a balance. So I'd like to see that, again, the stock market's been historically high. Doing this bonding, if we do it this year, I don't know the time frame, but the full $55 million would put all of it one shot, and then it's all at MERS hands, and we're going to be subject to that potential effect. So I want to make sure we really evaluate that. And what I would ask is just, again, please don't make this political. This is not something about he said or saying yes or no to a budget. This is really, let's really look at this, because this is putting a very big decision on the city taxpayers and the city itself, that we're hoping for the assumptions there, but we still need to make sure we know what's going to happen 5 or 10 years down the road if some type of a situation occurs that we may have our hands tide, and there are quite a few examples, and there are some big cities and very smart organizations that have gone through that negative experience. So I just wanted to bring it to light. And if I could ask anything is, when you're working through these different scenarios and you give them to them, I would like to see if there's some way that we could get, and I put it in here, like 15 million, to see what would be with 15 million borrowing, what would our ARC payment be, what would the funding ratio be, 20 million, so forth, 25. If we don't, or at least different scenarios, so us on council here will be very, very well informed of the different, if we do this, this is not going to work, But I'd like to know that, because I think this is a real big, if you read those articles, you'll see it's a very big, risky, potential, very high risk thing that could happen to our city. So thank you for your time, and again, I hopefully, please, I don't want it should not be political. This should just be some fact-finding, and hopefully you guys understand and approve and appreciate some of the stuff we read through. And if you guys have more as council or the city, I would appreciate it, get as much as possible to get us the best information possible regarding this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could.
Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem Archibald has
He's
something
probably
say.
going to lead right, I'll lead right in probably what he's wanting. So you and I have been sitting here for almost 10 years now, and for the better part of that, we have had this discussion on pension, on how are we going to get ourselves out of this, on bonding, and clearly, we've done our research. We've done our homework. This has been years in the making of trying to figure out what to do. When we looked for a replacement and hired James, it was that was our number one thing. We need you to figure out what we're going to do. You talk about if we don't do this, or down the road, if something happens, we're going to have to cut services. If we don't do this, we're going to cut a lot more than services. We're going to cut services, we're going to raise taxes, and we're going to do a whole lot of other things, including probably not have a police and fire department in order to pay pension liability. So it might sound good that maybe we want to do this differently, or maybe we only bond half of it, but the reality is, whether we like it or not, we don't have a choice. It's do this now, or cut services and cut employees and raise taxes and still hope that we stay afloat as a city. And so I just don't see any other option. I know some of the council members are newer and haven't been privy to the many years of discussion that we have had, but I just don't see us being able to kick this down the can any longer, or down the road any longer, and I think we need to address it. It's not political. We've had plenty of opportunity to ask any questions and do any research we want. We've had numerous meetings about it, and I think now's the time to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think that, yes.
Before the city manager speak, I would just like to speak to that too. I don't know where the political came in at, and I'm not personal sitting up here as a leader, but I do, I guess I don't know if I take exception or saying this is very serious before us. Even if this wasn't a budget, everything we do here when we come into these council chambers and we have before us a packet, everything is serious. This may have a higher priority tonight because it's the law, and we need to have to vote on a balanced budget. That is the law. And so when I ask, that we have a unanimous vote on this, you know what? It was so unselfish. It's almost pathetic. It's for the people. They believed enough in us to pass this millage, and this is what we settled for. In terms of what we had to negotiate as far as moving this budget forward and moving our city forward. So without all the nickety-knack stuff up here, I just wanted us to look beyond that and see that. And in 10 years, none of us probably won't even be here. We don't even know about tomorrow. I might know who holds tomorrow, but we don't know about tomorrow. But what you do today, here in the present time, makes the difference. And then the facts that I rely on is not solely, we have an excellent financial staff here. We have an excellent person up here as city manager to do his due diligence. And I have before me actually work that I have done personally, just didn't take their words for it. But this does align with our budget, and it does see us into that immediate pathway that we have to go. So I'm just asking you, you vote however you want to vote, and that's fine, but it's nothing, I'm not, shame about asking you if you could just jump on board and let's just show a united front up here tonight. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, but I'm just telling you, there should never be a time when a leader puts themselves first and saying, I got this, we're going to do this, and put our citizens behind. No, they come first. Thank you.
Mayor, Rep, fellow council members, Councilman Warden is right. As a fiduciary of the city, we in full disclosure, we must address market risk.
Amen.
There are thousands of communities that have bonded pensions across the country, and some have not gone well. Any good financial expert is going to warn you on market risk. We would be derelict in our fiduciary duty if we didn't acknowledge market risk. That is why this will be the largest financial decision of my career. And the reason why this is important to me is because in 30 years, I'm probably still going to be working. And if this deal goes south, it will haunt me for my entire career. So this is about me having a job in 5 years. So here's what we've done. Here's what we've done. Other communities, Scott brings up a very good point. Unrealistic return on investments. Changing mortality tables. They're looking at changing 2 generational tables in the next 2 years. We have been fighting with MERS for the 5 years I've been here to get an actual valuation based on more realistic assumptions. That is why I worked with Treasury, through 2 different state treasurers now, to help craft Bulletin 11. Bulletin 11 is the box, the safety box that Treasury has built to prevent bad bonding deals like other ones have made. 1, you cannot use a rate of return any higher than 7.35%. In addition, they want to see a sensitivity analysis. And there's actually 9 different models. We need to see our rate of return on our investments at 100 and 200 basis points low. So what if we don't achieve 7.35? What's it look like at 6.35? And what's it look like at 5.35? We also need to show sensitivity to our issuance cost. You mentioned $31 million of borrowing cost. One of the things that you forgot to leave on the other side of the equation is what the earnings are. If the market actually earns 5 to 7%, we will actually make money on the bonding proceeds. The reason why we're extending amortization to 30 years is that even in the last 10 years, even with the Great Recession and all of that, if you use a 10-year horizon, the rate of returns are actually about 8 to 9%. So by using a 30-year amortization, you're more likely to realize your return on investments and your valuations. Additionally, we need to make sure that we maintain a remaining ARC. So what Treasury has dictated is that they don't want us bonding out more than 20%. Because there will be deviations in the out years. It may go down. We may end up doing very well, like Oakland County did. Oakland County bonded, they're overfunded. Some communities like Ottawa, they issued about $40 million. They were 10 short. They did a remaining ARC. We have factored in our comprehensive business plan under Bulletin 11 to account for 1, market risk, sensitivity analysis. So when I bring my business plan to you in the next, I'll have it to you in 30 days. In 30 days, you will have 9 different models that shows the sensitivity, the market risk, and the analysis going forward. And then in the out years, you will have to look at deviation. What if we only make 5%? Historically, the market's always done about 8. What if we only make 5%? Well, our issuance cost was only about 4.75, so we're still good on it. There will be years in which you lose some money because the market goes down, just as it did in 08, just as it did in 03. But if you look at the long horizon, the markets over time will come back. That's why you use a longer ratio. So we will implement Bulletin 11 to build those safety nets in place. Because the reason why this is so complicated is we want to make sure it's done in a proper fiduciary manner that accepts the market risk and then mitigates the variables where possible and then acknowledges what if things don't work out as planned. What are the alternatives? What are the options? And so all of the business plan we bring forward will acknowledge market risk. We'll show you sensitivity analysis, and then we'll also show you, does the risk outweigh the benefits? If we lose 10% in 15, 20 years, we're still probably better to the good, operationally. You'll also do what's called a PV analysis. We must demonstrate to Treasury, because at the end of the day, State of Michigan is going to sign off on this deal. And well, I wouldn't say they're smarter than I am, but they're close. The State of Treasury has to sign off on it. And the issue is what's the present value, both the nominal savings and the short-term savings? So what is our present value on the annual basis going forward, both in UL and in amortization payment? So we have to demonstrate a savings of at least 20%. So imagine we save 20%. Even if we end up losing 5% than what we anticipated, we're still ahead 15%. So Treasury wants the savings to be so great at 20% of PV that even if it doesn't work out marginally in the end, you're still better for it. So it's a three-prong approach. The return on investments must be reasonable, the sensitivity and issuance cost, and then your PV value and savings. Those three bundled packaged together, and you will see all those financial models brought forth. And so there's a reason why I've been on the phone with Treasury and MERS and conference calls with Ed, and I stare at a spreadsheet all day. And so we are working on that business plan. I trust my judgment, but then at the end of the day, you want outside expert opinion. So we have worked with R.W. Baird. It is a leading bonding agency in the country, one of the leading bonding agencies. Their financial experts are helping us write the business plan, validating it, and they're going to sign when they submit to Treasury that their firm has reviewed our business plan. So this is not just a business plan that I'm forming. We're working with outside financial experts and bond counsel. We need a second opinion. This is too big for you to take my word on. You deserve a second opinion, an expert opinion, and you're going to get that because it's required by law. You have to have an outside validation of our assumptions. So, Scott, I appreciate it. You're right. The agent in you, it's true. We have to acknowledge market risk. We have to plan for the unforeseen. We'll bring a business plan that does that.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on resolution number 2? I would like to thank you, too, for the work going into the budget and for Ed's department, Ed and his staff, and all the department heads for everything they have to do to make it all balanced. So thank you very much. And we will take the vote.
Councilmember Harris.
No.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Yes.
Councilmember Warden.
No.
Councilmember Archibald.
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford.
Yes, for the people.
Councilmember Beeden. Yes. Mayor Rep.
Yes. We'll move on to item 3, please.
Approving the Uniform Video Service Local Franchise Agreement with Comcast of Michigan, LLC, for a period of 10 years.
Is there a motion?
So move.
Councilmember Ashford, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Pemberton. Could you please give us
Yeah, Madam
an
Mayor,
overview?
we have to have an agreement for Comcast to enter within our road right-of-way. We charge a franchise fee of 5%. That's what it's always been for the city. I attempted to negotiate a better deal, but then I was quickly informed that under Act 480 provides that failure to approve the Uniform Video Local Franchise Agreement and determine the franchise fee before the end of 30 days will result in the franchise agreement being automatically approved. So I did call Comcast and said, is there any negotiation that needs to take place? And they said, sure, what would you like to talk about? I go, what do we want? What can we talk about? They go, nothing. I said, okay. So that was. I think the state's trying to put uniformity in these agreements all across the state, so there's not like each city has a different thing going. I get that. So there really was no negotiation. This was just kind of emailed to us. So just to be honest with you guys.
You didn't spend a lot of time then negotiating on this, is what you're trying to say.
I tried. I put a good effort. There was just nothing to negotiate.
Because
Go ahead.
we used to get a lot of complaints about that, too. You know,
Yeah.
Comcast.
Well, back in like the 90s, they gave us all new TV equipment
Yeah.
for transmission. So I tried to hit them up on that. Like, our monitors are getting a little old. And they told me, oh, nope, laws changed. We're not allowed to do that anymore. And so then I asked for everything and was told no.
And given nothing, huh?
And given nothing.
Okay, is there any other discussion? We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Pemberton.
Yes.
Councilmember Warden.
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald.
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford.
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden. Yes. Councilmember Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Rep.
Yes. Item 4.
Authorizing the purchase of 11 tax foreclosed properties from the St. Clair County Treasurer in the total amount of $68,267.89, along with all associated transferring costs for the public purpose of future industrial development projects for job creation, blight elimination, and/or rehabilitation.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mayor Pro Tem Archibald, is there a second?
Support.
Councilmember Beeden.
Madam Mayor, these homes will be bought and evaluated by our Community Development Office. If they're salvageable, we will rehab them through our Port Huron Housing Corporation using our HUD dollars to rehab them and sell them to first-time home buyers and to low to moderate income people. But if they're too far gone, then we will demolish them. So that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Any questions, discussion?
Mayor Rep?
Yes,
I
Councilmember.
just kind of like to know the status. We bought 10 properties about a year ago, and I know the property in the corner of 16th and Wells, other than the lawn cutting, has had nothing done to it. So what's the progress
So,
on these?
our community development office is actually bidding out some of the rehabs right now of those homes. So let me email you tomorrow and get you a status update on that specific parcel. I'll actually send you the ones for all of them last year. We can get that tomorrow out. We'll email you an update on each one.
It's nice property, but I'm, you know, it's,
I want to say that's the one that they're getting ready to rehab. They take about 2 at a time because it's just a lot to manage with one person. And we want to make sure we do them right, so I'll find out where they're at on it.
thank you.
Any other discussion, questions?
Yep, Mayor Up?
Yes, Councilmember Warden.
Can you, just for the, you know, when we get 11, was this 11 properties?
Yes.
You know, I think it's outstanding that we, you know, when I see this thing, that we can grab these properties for tax foreclosures. I'm just wondering how they all come about, like how are we grabbing those and being the first in line there to grab? I mean, it's just, it seems outstanding to me.
Under law, the municipality has first right of refusal. And so the issue is before we purchased these homes, a lot of them that should have been bulldozed down became slum rentals. And then the ones that were in great condition, somebody would buy it and then immediately flip it, or, you know, to a family that could have bought it on their own, but now they're either renting it or had to pay a huge premium. So that's why the state allowed local municipalities to get first right of refusal.
I think it's outstanding, again, to see that, and also with our different programs that we have evaluating, you know, have an opportunity to take a look to see whether we're going to clean them up, fix them up, demolish them. It's a good job. You have my support.
Any other questions, discussion?
If any of you would like to take a tour of the homes before they go through the rehab process, I would highly encourage you, email David Haynes, and you can walk, because unless you see it before, you don't appreciate the rehabs that we do. And I know Nicole has 2 or 3 in the pipeline. Take a quick walk through, see them before they get rehabbed, and then come back in 6 months and see the finished product, and you'll really, truly appreciate the program.
Some of those are the Pride of Port Huron as well?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, great job.
We'll take the vote.
Councilmember Warden?
Yes.
Councilmember Archibald?
Yes.
Councilmember Ashford?
Yes.
Councilmember Beeden?
Yes.
Councilmember Harris?
Yes.
Councilmember Pemberton?
Yes.
Mayor Rapp?
Yes, that concludes our regular agenda. I'm going to ask the city manager if he'll give a brief update on the situation on Cedar Street on the burned-out property, because it was brought before us at the last meeting, and it was out there in the public, so I think the public would like to know what the answer to that question was. So.
Absolutely. I didn't realize they were coming that night, or I would have had the case file up. So the property was not fully burned out. It was actually only damaged about 20–30%. A demolition requires damage of at least 50% before we can have reason to actually demolish it. The homeowner, actually, because it burned out, he had to actually downgrade the density, so it's not as many units. I think it's 2 instead of 4. And he was working on it, but he just took too long, and we fined a lot of them. I think we fined him over $1,200 to get that property done, and we gave him his last deadline, and he missed it. And so now we use our legal authority to go in and make the repairs ourselves, and then assess him the property repairs to his taxes. So we gave him ample opportunity. He was making good progress, but the home wasn't to be quite frank, I hadn't seen it until so I was expecting a burned out, bombed out house, and it was actually in really decent shape, just needed to be finished. And so we will take it upon ourselves to take legal action necessary to finish that property and then assess him for the damages. We are holding $12,000 of his money, and I believe he probably could have buttoned that up for a lot less than 12, so he'll regret this decision.
It's good.
Thank you. Thank
Did
you.
he sign? I know you
We'll find,
mentioned
I think,
that.
he hasn't come in yet, has he? No.
Oh, okay.
We'll surprise him with that in the morning.
Oh, okay.
But the neighbors were right, it needed to be fixed.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that update to us. Is there anything else to come before the council?
Mayor Up?
Councilmember Warden.
Well, I just want to say this Memorial Day weekend, we had an outstanding, beautiful weather, great turnout again downtown for the parade. The veterans and Boy Scouts and seamen, this young Sea Scouts and police department, fire department, and a great turnout. And I always go to that service there at Pine Grove Park, and I thought the mayor, did another outstanding job for your speech and words, and as well, I think Chief Platzer's here as well. He had some nice comments as well. Again, these type of things are very, very, I feel very valuable, and the community engagement, that was a good turnout and a very good thing for our city.
Thank
Good job.
you. Anything else?
Mayor Rep, during our transit, Blue Water Area Transit, serving as your representative, you mentioned that Zaxter will be going away pretty soon, and I was hoping the city manager could speak to that. That's the bikes.
Yeah, it looks like the Zagster company is going to be changing its model, so I think this is probably the last season if we even get a full season out of them. So it looks like that the whole business model of bike share across the country appears to be changing. So we're still working with Zagster to see what's going to happen and what the timeline is, but we just don't know right now.
Oh, okay. And then number two, on, I think it was Monday, yesterday, the Detroit News article, it made mention of, St. Clair County as a whole, and the overall job that we're doing within our county and reshaping and making our region and city and neighboring communities more better. And the article highlighted that we collectively had to, rethink basically how we do business in order to become as successful as we have become. And one statement I found that was just so tell-all is that it mentioned the more opportunities for success actually came about from the willingness of working together, representing a diverse sector of stakeholders. And I would just like to give hats off to Jeff Bohm of St. Clair County Board of Commissioners and Hale Walker, who is the trustee of St. Clair County Foundation. I think he's an executive board member also. And also Thelma Costello, CEO of the Blue Water Area Chambers of Commerce, who played a big part. And I'd also like to acknowledge our own city manager for his efforts in moving forward our city, and also in coordination with the rest of the stakeholders. And I do think it takes all of them together working on a collaborative basis to, have the success that we are currently experiencing. And so they just got us here as a beacon of prosperity and hope for today, for a better tomorrow. So that's it. So we're getting a lot of press, not just from our own local, but people are noticing us outside of Port Huron. I think that's where it counts, where we can draw more people here, developers here, to help make a difference, for our city. So that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. If there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, so moved.
Meeting adjourned.
I could have helped that part.